Thank you so much, Jesse, and for the Division of Family and Community Empowerment for helping host this event this evening. Thank you all also for coming to the Citywide Council for English Language Learners Town Hall with our special guest for the night, Chancellor Misha Porter. The Citywide Council for English Language Learners welcomes the voices of our community and our families. We appreciate you and also your guidance, which is why we are so excited to host this town hall with the Chancellor tonight. It is your time to be heard. We will get through as many questions as we can this evening, and on behalf of the Citywide Council for English Language Learners, we thank you for your attendance and dedication to our community, our students, and our families. It is now my pleasure to welcome Chancellor Misha Porter.
Good evening, and thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Wu, for welcoming me. Thank you to the entire council for all of the work that you have done. And I promise to be better than I was last time to the translators, because I know I talked really fast. But I want to thank the translators for all they've done throughout this pandemic to support family and community engagement across this city. These have been difficult and challenging times, and I'm immensely proud of the students, educators, and families of our L students and families who've shown great resilience and perseverance through these unprecedented times. Thanks to your advocacy, you have continued to lift the concerns and issues your children have faced during this pandemic. You've ensured that the needs of our L students stay at the forefront of our decision-making. And I want to look at the big picture. Our system is so special and so strong because of our diversity and what you and your children bring to the table. That is why it is so important that in our schools, we respect, affirm, and celebrate the diversity of our students' identities and experiences. I want to take this opportunity to recognize Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month and confirm my continued commitment to working alongside you to make sure we are making our schools safe and welcoming spaces for our Asian American and Pacific Islander students and families and staff. Our shared mission is more vital than ever, given all our schools' communities have been through. This is why we are so focused on creating welcoming, loving environments for all of our children. I want to make sure that each child isn't just heard, but that they feel important to all of the adults around them. I want them to feel that their teachers and school community value their past and present experiences, as well as their dreams for the future. And I want to make clear there is no room for racism or discrimination of any kind in the Department of Education or in any of our schools. Your work is so important, and I want to thank you for all you do for the DOE. In the 20 plus years that I've been at the DOE as a teacher, principal, superintendent, executive superintendent in the Bronx, I could have only done all of that work with the great progress of I could have only made such progress as a result of the partnerships that I've had with families and community members. And I welcome the opportunity to continue to work with families to address the concerns and meet the needs of all of our learners. I'm looking forward to hearing from you to inform our work as we move forward through the rest of this year in partnership and hopefully on to better times. Please know that we will follow up with you to provide answers to any questions that we do not get to cover this evening. You know me, you've heard about me. I'm here today because I had so many amazing women in my life, and I became a teacher because of them. My mom and my auntie were both teachers in the New York City Department of Education, and I'm a proud product of New York City's public schools. And so I know very clearly what our public schools can do when they wrap themselves around you. And in fact, I wouldn't be here if not for those teachers and leaders who wrap themselves around me. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to visit my alma mater, Queens Technical. It was Queens Vocational when I was there so long ago. And it actually made me really old because I realized that this is my 30th year out of high school. But I never forget how the people just really took care of me. And that is our job, and that is our work for each and every one of our students. And so we are working on planning for fall. The mayor announced that New York City will be fully reopened by July 1st. And I want to make sure our schools are fully reopened too. I've said over and over again, my commitment is to open, open, open. And now you know when, because we got the calendar out. It's just been released and you could find it on the New York City Department of Education website. But before we jump to fall, we have to spend some time thinking about summer. This summer, we are going bolder and bigger, and we are especially excited to be working with ELLs in new and exciting ways than we have in prior years. We know that summer is a critical opportunity for multilingual learners and English language learners to continue their learning and to connect and engage with their peers. This summer, while there is not a central hosted multilingual learner summer academy, Central will be ensuring that we work closely with our schools to ensure that we're providing supports to our multilingual learners as we have in past years, and will be providing any supports, curriculum, materials, organizational needs that schools have. We are so lucky in this moment to have the financial resources that we haven't had in past years. And we are investing over $11 million for ELL provisions, the biggest investment in years. Most of this funding will be for an ESOL certified teachers to provide standalone or co-teaching instruction. For the first time in years, summer sites serving grades 9 through 12 will get funding to hire an ESOL certified teacher. We project that summer sites will be able to enroll over 62,000 MLs and Ls in grades K through 12, nearly 8 times the number of MLs and Ls we have been able to serve in years past. In ML Summer Academy, we opened 100 hubs across the city, but this year, there will be 500 plus summer school sites that can participate. Overall, there will be more school buildings open, more enrichment opportunities, and more outdoor fun. Academic support combined with social emotional learning is our path forward, and ensuring that our students see and experience themselves in the curriculum every day. Additionally, for the first time, we'll be serving students K-12. So that means our K-2 students who haven't had the opportunity to be in a building will have an opportunity to do so this summer. We're also partnering with community-based organizations and families to design a summer experience that really and truly center students' needs and the needs of the communities we serve. English language learners will be participating in the academic and enrichment programs alongside their English proficient peers. In addition, we have also identified arts organizations that can collaborate with ENL teachers and co-design experiences for multilingual learners during morning academic sessions of standalone ENL. Take advantage of this opportunity and sign your child up for Summer Rising, or to get more information, visit nyc.gov/Summer Rising. Now to the fall. Last week, Mayor de Blasio released the executive budget for the next fiscal year, which will begin on July 1st. I'm very pleased to say that we are getting the resources we need to carry out much of our important work as we march towards fully reopening. For the first time ever, starting in the 2021-22 school year, all New York City public schools will receive 100% of their fair student funding. This long-term commitment will help ensure every single school has what they need to support their students and staff during these challenging times. To help our students regain their academic footing after the disruption of the last year, the budget includes $500 million for additional academic support. That will include using assessment results to provide opportunities to accelerate learning, which could include extended learning time and intentional focus on math and ELA, personalized tutoring support, and targeted services for special needs students. The new budget will also enable us to expand pre-K for all special education. This has been something that our advocates have really been fighting for, and we're excited to make this happen. This year has also shown beyond a shadow of a doubt how critical technology will be for the 21st century. And we've been working on building these 21st century classrooms for a long time and have over 500,000 devices in the hands of our young people. However, what we've also learned in this time is that nothing replaces the interaction between a student and a teacher in a classroom. And so we'll be looking to ensure that we use this technology to build our classroom practices and leverage those devices to take our students further. We also have additional support to dedicate to programs and related services for our special needs students in K-12, including physical and speech therapy, And beginning in the next fiscal year, we will also receive additional funding to expand restorative justice programs and PSAL while restoring funding to learning to work and arts programs. We also made another important investment and announcement about a historic expansion in access to school-based mental health services to confront and heal the trauma caused by COVID-19. Over 600 social workers, psychologists, and family support workers will be hired, lifting the total across the city to more than 6,000. We will also be looking for bilingual social workers and guidance counselors and family workers to be able to serve the needs of, again, our diverse community. Mental health screenings will take place this fall. Educators and school staff will have access to this tool. The goal is for a screening to be completed for every single student. However, we want parents to know that there's always a choice, and parents will have the option to opt out if they're not comfortable with their child participating. In addition, to the mental health resources and training, we also have Parent University available to support our families in helping to support their students in learning and in all of the other ways that you want to engage with us. That's a lot of news and a lot of information, and I want to make sure all families get info in a way they are ready to receive it. Our website is translated into the 9 most commonly spoken languages by DOE families, and every family letter is translated and made available to principals for distribution to school communities. Schools submit a language translation and interpretation plan for families with descriptions of procedures, staff trainings, and communication. And I just want to make sure that you all know that it is a priority for all of us at the DOE to advance language justice and to make sure all of our families and all of our communities feel included. And so thank you for having me tonight. I look forward to taking your questions, but more importantly, I look forward to working together in partnership in service of our students.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Porter, for the welcoming remarks and for your words of support. We will have initially a few questions from the members of our council. And then after that, I will respectfully request Senior Director Justine Mojica to open the public comment portion of the evening to hear from our community members. Now, the first question is from our council member, Dr. Christopher Wagner, who is also an assistant professor at Queens College in the Early Childhood Division, focusing on multilingual learners. Council member Wagner, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Chancellor Porter. The Council released a report last year that showed that only 1 in 4 ELLs who are eligible for a bilingual program under the Commissioner's regulations are placed in such a program. More than 71,000 ELLs who qualify for a bilingual education program in the city are not receiving one. Under state rules, these children and families have a right to enroll in a bilingual program. There are also disparities in where bilingual programs are offered. 8 districts in the city provide a bilingual education program to fewer than 10% of their eligible ELLs. And 5 districts alone account for 1/3 of all eligible ELLs who are not receiving a bilingual education program. There are 3 parts to this question. I will ask them all together, but please do let me know if you would like me to repeat these. First, what steps will you take to address the lack of bilingual programs in the city? Second, how will you ensure access to bilingual programs is equitable across boroughs and districts? And third, how will you support teachers who want to get certified as bilingual teachers or work with ELLs who have IEPs, including teachers who may come from other countries?
Thank you so much, Mr. Wagner, for your question. And our commitment to our English language learners and expanding bilingual programs is present and real. And what we have in this moment is an opportunity in which we are resourced to actually build on those programs. I also agree with you that we need to make sure that there's equity of access and that we are being thoughtful about where and how we place programs across the city. We also need to ramp up our recruitment efforts and provide pathways for multiple certifications for our teachers. And we need to be intentional about recruiting teachers to get certified in to get bilingual certification so that they can provide further support to our students. And so we are going to be working towards moving that forward. But I'm also going to invite our Deputy Chief Academic Officer, Mirza Sanchez Medina, who's with me, to also add on some comments regarding our supports and services.
Thank you, Chancellor Porter and Dr. Wagner. I know you have been working with us. We provided that data. And we are happy that the council is advocating for increased number of bilingual programs. We have been working and have a plan for expansion of bilingual programs. We know that during the pandemic, we had to pause a bit, but we have worked with every look at the data of every BCO, every district, to see where are the opportunities to, number one, provide professional learning for teachers, provide professional learning for principals. As a former principal of a school dedicated for multilingual learners, I am clear and know very well the importance of knowing how to design well programs for students, for multilingual programs, bilingual program, transitional bilingual programs, and dual language programs, what kind of curriculum is needed, and also the certification needed for teachers. And I had to work really hard to ensure that my teachers obtained the bilingual education program, the bilingual certification. We have worked with human capital, and we have programs for teachers to get their certification. We also collaborate with CUNY to ensure that they are promoting bilingual certification programs for teachers. We know that it's a little bit more difficult for students to get that additional certification. So we are working with, we have a work group around that. All to say that this is something that's very important to us. It's at the center of our strategic plan. And what we're looking at is, number one, how do we build sustainable programs, not just open programs here and there, but have a sustainable and continuing program on a K through 12. And at the same time, how do we ensure equity of these programs throughout the city? Yes, we know that it's important, but it's important to us to ensure that we continue to build the capacity within the school and in terms of personnel, curriculum, and resources. Like the Chancellor said, the fact that now we have the funding that's going to support schools and building these programs. Mitch?
Thank you so much. Our next question is coming from Councilmember Vincent Liu, who is one of our parent leaders from Brooklyn. Vincent, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Chancellor Porter. On last Thursday, you made a comment on the result of specialized high school entrance exam and refer it as unacceptable. Your comment is equivalent to the rhetoric that says there are too many Asians, which deliver a message tells Asians that they don't belong in these schools despite their hard work. I think that mindset is very racist. Our Asian community is respectfully demanding your apology for that non-culturally responsive and divisive comment. With that all said, how are you supporting cultural responsive education and the ethnic student curriculum? Just so everyone aware of, there is still lack of Asian history in DOE curriculum, and our Asian parents had to go to news and petition for incorporating Asian history into a curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. And first, let me just say, I am I'm sorry, Mr. Liu, did I say your name correctly?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, let me just say, I'm 100% clear that I am the chancellor for all New York City public school students. And it's my responsibility to call out inequities in our system when I see them. That includes the inequities that I saw in the results of the specialized high school exams in terms of representation. However, that in no way means or takes away from the very hard work that our Asian American students have done to get into those seats, and that their families have supported them in getting to that place. And so I just want to make clear that I'm very aware of my responsibility when it comes to all of our students across New York City public schools, as well as my responsibility as the leader of the system to ensure that our Asian American students feel safe and welcomed in their school communities. And with that said, it is imperative as we come back from this pandemic that we ensure, and I said this in my opening remarks, that our schools are welcoming and affirming, that our students feel safe, and that our students also attend school in places where all of the adults have high expectations for them. What is equally important is that all of our students see themselves in the curriculum they experience every single day. And our work forward, and again, we are in a wonderful moment to have resources to do that. Our work forward is to ensure that we are building that curriculum, that we are holding our schools accountable for having representative curriculum, and that all of the amazing, beautiful communities that we serve are represented in our schools.
Thank you, Chancellor. Mitchell, do we have a third question you mentioned?
Well, yes, we have a third question. I would like to introduce Councilmember Munir Abrab. When you're ready, you may ask your question, please.
Yeah, good evening, Councillor and everybody. My question is, the ELL students have faced many challenges during the past year due to the pandemic, including the inability to probably function with remote learning. What is being done to assist and support ELL students to catch up with the education that has been lost? And please be more specific as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are deeply committed to ensuring that our schools are designing programs that specifically support all of their students, but specifically and intentionally our English language learners. And so that will look a number of different ways this summer. It will look like academic enrichment. It will look like very specific literacy strategies. It will look like very specific assessments that we are doing to measuring student learning. It would also look like ensuring that we have social emotional supports in place, because there's also been the emotional disconnect from school, as well as ensuring that we are building those social connections that are also important to develop the skills, the language skills of our English language learners. And so we intend to do that work beginning this summer. And I really, really, really want to encourage our ENL families to sign up for Summer Rising and to leverage this resource to address some of that loss. I also will say that the Department of Multilingual Learners will be working very closely with schools to ensure that they are addressing our English language learners population as they plan for Summer Rising. And again, I'll call in Deputy Chief Academic Officer Mirza Sanchez to add to that comment as well.
Thank you, Chancellor. Everything that the Chancellor said, and in addition to that, I want to add that every school develops a language allocation policy plan where they are detailing what are they going to do with all English language learners, and in terms of the instruction and the supports that students are going to receive. So I don't want to belabor the answer, but I want to emphasize that for English language learners, the best way to bring students up to speed is to have a very strong core instruction, having those students in the classroom, having those students having those connections with one another so they can continue to build the language and then they continue to build the instruction in the classroom. That's all I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And President Wu, if there are no more questions, we're going to go to the public portion of the meeting.
Yes, thank you, Senior Director Mojica. Please proceed to the public portion of the meeting.
Thank you, sir. So thank you, everyone. We have taken the list of everyone who signed up to speak and created a random speaking order. The speaking order of the next 5 people to speak will be on the screen. I will call your name and your line will be unmuted. Everyone has 1.5 minutes, and you will see a timer on your screen that will show you how much time you have left. So ladies and gentlemen, we will be seeing a listing shortly, and I will be calling everyone, and your line will be unmuted. Thank you, Rebecca. So our first speaker for this evening is Alyssa. Alyssa, your line is
Yes,
unmuted.
you know what? I happen to be in a place where it's extremely difficult to speak, so I'll pass up my turn because I'm in Whole Foods right now, but listening carefully. I'm so sorry.
Not a problem, Alyssa. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
I knew it would wind up being the same.
Next speaker is Lu Zhao. Lu, you're able to unmute.
Hello?
Lu, yes,
Can
we
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you. Yes,
Yeah,
we
okay.
can.
Okay, actually the question is also follow up with just one sentence side, about the specialized high school. I know, the issue is we understand, those kids, especially Asian kids, many of them come from immigrant families. We are talking about English as second language. Many of them actually was English as second language students, during their years in school, and so it was very difficult for them to get into those specialized high school. But they make it through. So we know that it's have to through a lot of hard work, and also have to be a long-term strategy. So basically, you have to start from elementary school, all the way up. So I want to understand what the counselors, I understand the problem. If you see there's a racial, representation issue, I understand that is a problem. But I want to understand what's the solution to it. If that solution try to solve the problem, for example, a lot of minority students that in disadvantage, and the government want to help them to start very early and to prepare them, or you just try to hide the problem. You change the admission process, and all of a sudden, the number changes, and then we say, oh, there's no problem. It would be very easy, right? But
Thank you.
which way you want to go? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for your question. And I will tell you very clearly, my recommendation for a solution is that in nowhere should we have one measure for entrance into any community in our system. That is not how we admit students into colleges. That is not how we enter family students into the career world. And that is not a practice across the system. And so my recommendation is that we have multiple measures that may include the exam, but that there not be a single measure that is demonstrating the exclusion of a group of students. And that we work together, and we've offered specialized high school prep across the city, increased access to it. And so we have done those things in very real ways across our system. However, it's just my belief that there should not be one single measure that produces the results that it produces.
Thank you, Chancellor. Our next speaker is Shannon Wu. Ms. Wu, you are able to unmute. Shannon, are you able to hear us? Okay, we'll go to our next speaker, Elaine Wong. Elaine, you're able to unmute. Okay, we'll keep going through the list and come back to those names. Next on the list is Wendy Wang. Wendy, you're able to unmute. Wendy, can you hear us? Okay, we'll keep going down the list. Next speaker is Yang Wang. Yan, you're able to unmute. Okay, we will go to Carmen. Carmen, you're able to unmute. So I'll take this opportunity to go into, reach out to our interpreters and reach out to the interpretation rooms to ask if there are any families in our interpretation rooms that have questions for the Chancellor. Ladies and gentlemen, what will happen during that time is that we will remain silent on the line to give our interpreters an opportunity to speak to our parents. And once they have spoken to them, they'll come back on the line with questions. So if we can just keep the line silent for about 30 seconds to give them an opportunity.
There are no questions in the Spanish room.
Thank you, Yellen.
有部分家长有问题吗？
No one in the Cantonese room.
Thank you, Yudi.
No questions from the Mandarin room.
Thank you, everyone. So I'll just ask Learning Times to give us the next 5 names on the speaker list. And next person is Kai Mao. Kai, you're able to unmute.
It's not a question, it's just a comments. I think Ms. Porter's comments on the special high school admission result is racism, is discrimination against Asian. And her perception of the result is completely wrong. I hereby request her to resign because she is disqualified to lead.
Okay, we're going to go to our next speaker. Next speaker is Jessica Martinez. Jessica, you're able to unmute.
Hi, good afternoon. My basic question is, I have a 3-year-old in a public school system, and I know that with the city's current regulations changing from mask wearing policies, indoor and outdoor for those who are vaccinated, and I know that there are teachers who are being vaccinated, and those who are not, is that affecting any decisions being made for the children having to wear masks in the classrooms, especially since we keep seeing the reports of the random testing where it'll be 1 case or 2 case, and one classroom getting shut down? Like, is this something that's being discussed to match what the city is doing, or are we sticking with the safety protocols in place for our children in the school system to remain masked and to remain safe and distance of 6 feet for now until the new school year starts?
So we are sticking with the safety protocols as it relates to masks. We haven't changed that. What we have changed in some elementary schools where we needed to, in order to accommodate more students, is we've adopted the CDC's recommendation to move to 3 feet. That has not happened at every elementary school. It's happened at some that needed to do that to add more, to incorporate more students and families who opted in during our opt-in period. However, as far as masks and health and safety protocols, those remain in place.
Our next speaker is Maria Colon. Maria, you're able to unmute. Maria, are you able to hear us? Okay, we'll go to our next speaker, which is Sheraban Demiri, and my apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. Sheraban, you're able to unmute.
Hello, yes, that's my name. Thank you. I just had a question about, is there anything in plan for the kids to have like extracurricular activities where they would do something outdoors? And will they also be having teachers speak about like the physical and mental health benefits of actually being outside and having physical activity, or what will be done with that?
I'm assuming that you're talking about summer right now, and I'll talk a little bit about summer and I'll talk about the fall. And so a big part of our Summer Rising program is also about connecting our students to outdoor activities and, you know, more physical activities, because folks have been cooped up in homes for over a year now. And so that is a critical part of, we believe, the bringing our students back into school safely. As we move towards September, again, my hope is that we can bring all of our students back. And as we do that, it would be that we would include those activities as a part of their day, but again, following the health and safety guidelines to do that appropriately.
And I see that one of our previous speakers is back. So I wanted to go back to Elaine Wong. Elaine, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, do you understand why so many of the Asians are kind of up in arms? My understanding is that G&T and funding for honors classes was taken away from many of the underprivileged schools. And then from the period that we were told that it was mostly Asians and whites, my understanding was also mostly Black and Latino that were in the specialized high schools. I want to know how you are thinking about remedying, adding classes for honors and G&T back into underprivileged areas, as opposed to pointing to a specific race that is deemed too high in success levels in the high school test. These things seem to, I think, in a way, contribute to anti-Asian hate crimes. And that's why I think you're getting the comments that you're getting. It's not remedying the problem at the level of when children are starting school. You're just pointing the fingers to high school, which is about 11 years in. So
I'm sorry, Ms. Wong, I don't know if that was the end of your question, but you went mute.
Elaine, can you hear us?
yes, I actually just wanted to understand what you're actually thinking about proposing to add classrooms back into for G&T and honors in underprivileged schools. It shouldn't be pointing a finger to the high school level. That is just way too late for those children in that community. So if you want to make it equal for everyone, that needs to go back into underprivileged.
So thank you for your question. So first of all, let me just say no one has heard me or can quote me speaking about our Asian American students and the opportunities that they've had. What I've pointed to is the lack of offers to Black and Latino students. And I agree with you. High school is one step after many, many years of learning. And I also agree and think and know that we have the resources right now to expand opportunities to high level enrichment programs across the city. And I think that will change the game for all of our students. I also welcome a conversation with our Asian American families to talk specifically about this issue and to think together collectively and collaboratively about our path forward.
Our next speaker is David Dana. David, you're able to unmute. David, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. I wrote my comment out, so excuse me if it sounds rote. I like nearly all parents of children in the DOE school system are concerned about the current events and the tragedies that have gone on. And I do think they need to be addressed by our kids by our kids with the help of teachers. But I don't think that means that we need to adopt a new curriculum based on a political group, for instance, Black Lives Matter, or based on Ibram Kendi's philosophy of anti-racism. I do think they both have valid points of view, which should be considered, but I just don't think we should teach them as the only truth that's out there. That kind of sounds like we'll be replacing one doctrine with another. What I'd really like us to do is teach our kids how to think critically about all the information they'll be getting in their lives, how to sift through the facts and the fears, and to make evidence-based decisions. Even more so, I'd love it if we could teach them how to reason and how our brains react emotionally to situations. As Chancellor, how do you feel about moving towards a more general, reason-based education and not one that embraces a BLM-based curriculum, nor one centered around Ibram Kendi's anti-racist worldview? Thank you.
So I haven't offered a curriculum. What I've offered is, one, I agree with you about teaching our students critical thinking skills. I think that is critical for what it means to be a learner, what it means to engage in the 21st century. But I do believe that our curriculum needs to be reflective of our communities. I do believe our young people need to see themselves in the curriculum. And I think there are many, many ways that we can do that. I was an English teacher and I was able to bring diverse literature into the classroom and engage in critical conversations and really dive deeply into the text to build those very skills that you speak of. And I think that's important, right, to address many of the social issues across our country and in our city that students see and experience diversity in their learning.
And our next speaker is Queenie Yuho. Queenie, you're able to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Oh, yes. My question is, when will NYC to have Asian history curriculum as a part of curriculum? And I think it helps to erase, it helps to hatred. And from my understanding, most public schools, almost all public schools, don't have Asian history class, not even once a week. My second question is, what does Dr. Martin Luther King have anything to do with BLM movements? Because I saw some students doing online classwork where they learn about Dr. Martin Luther King, which is really good. But at the end of it, it says BLM. I do not see a correlation between them because BLM movement was never there during the time of Dr. Martin Luther King. The last one is not a question, but my comment, my opinion about the current DOE staff, what's his name, Alan B., who is the Queen's Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. What he said was that any supporters of CCELL.
Thank you.
So I think it's important to note that Asian American history is included in our Passport to Social Studies curriculum, Civics for All, and our Hidden Voices curriculum. And we've worked really hard to develop resources for schools to support discussions on anti-Asian bias, racism, and hate crimes. Additionally, individual schools are incorporating this very month into their program and as a part of our focus on culturally responsive curriculum. And so I just want to also acknowledge that as an education institution, we celebrate the diversity and contributions of our AAPI neighbors and continue to do so in our curriculum and in the curriculum our students experience every day.
And our next speaker is Cecilia Ziegler. Cecilia, you're able to unmute.
Good evening. Well, I did put my question inside the chat because my biggest concern is being a parent in the school since kindergarten. I have witnessed my particular school, PS 175, low enrollment, children being passed on, even though they're still struggling from kindergarten to first grade to the second grade to the third grade. And I'm glad to hear that you're offering these summer enrichment programs. That's great. However, I think we need to kind of dive more into their record system to really see where the money is going. Where's the disconnect? Why aren't there more Black teachers being hired and less being run out the door? I mean, the Henry Garnett School is only 2 of those schools after this man's namesake left, PS 175 and his hometown. However, why are we struggling so much just to get a Black history curriculum, just as well as any curriculum that represents the community of Harlem, the children that lives there? I'm not understanding, you know?
So I really heard that as a comment and not as a question. And what I will say is that we are working to provide ways in which we diversify our school system. We believe it is important that our staff and our schools are representative of the students we serve, and we continue to do that work.
Thank you, Chancellor. Our next speaker is Lila Vax. Lila, you're able to unmute. Okay, we'll go to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Rocio Zumaya. Rocio, you're able to unmute.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Chancellor Porter. My question is for the Rising program, the Summer Rising, program. For the parents who want to enroll currently, but their school is still pending, and they're undecided whether to enroll in that school or another school, what would be the best advice for those parents who might have children in multiple schools and want to have an answer before the deadline? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad you're interested in summarizing. It's going to be a great opportunity for our students. So I would say 2 things. One, if your school is not listed on the DYCD website, there's a link, another link that you can fill out a form to say that, and you will be contacted as soon as your school is loaded. If you have students at multiple schools and probably in the same community, I would recommend that you talk to your principal about the program that they're going to offer and see if there's a fit for all of your children in one place. We've asked our school communities to really work with families to ensure that they can access this wonderful resource that we have for the summer.
And our next speaker is Victoria. Victoria, you're able to unmute.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Porter, for being here today. I do really appreciate it. My question is for Summer Rising with ESOL. My daughter's in a kindergarten school, and the population there is mostly Hispanic and African American, but the teacher ratio to the children doesn't match. My school is a mostly white teacher school with children who are coming from many different Spanish countries who do not speak the language. How is ESO going to help my school where we have children who really don't speak English, and the staff that we have for ESL is 1 Spanish speaking staff member and another staff member is white American.
So I appreciate your question and definitely hear your concern. I'm going to ask our Deputy Chief Academic Officer to speak directly to your question for me.
Sure. Thank you, Chancellor. So Victoria, what's going to happen is that principals will be able to request funding to hire the ENL teacher, the English as a new language teacher, and that's the beauty of having the additional funding that we didn't have in the past. That way, the school will be able to support your child and other English language learners in the Summer Rising program.
Our next speaker is Gina Vasquez. Gina, you're able to unmute. Gina, can you hear?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having the meeting and taking my question. Besides being a parent, I'm also a special ed public school teacher. And I'd like to know about graduation for the end of the year. What would that look like? I know just like schools can have, some schools by case basis could have all their students enter the school full time. Is graduation on a case by case basis as well?
Good afternoon, good evening rather, thank you. So our schools are working we've given guidance to school around graduation, outdoor graduations, and we are encouraging our schools to do that. We know how much our students missed out on that in-person experience last year. We'll have more, to share as we get more guidance from the state on potentially having some indoor graduations. But, we are going to continue to prioritize the health and safety of our students as we plan for these really important moments and milestones.
Thank you, Chancellor. Our next speaker is Grace Francis. Grace, you're able to unmute.
Good evening, Chancellor and everyone. Thanks for taking my question. My question is this. What are some of your plans towards students and family of District 75 who are always left on the back burner of things? We always tend to get the crumbs of things. Our kids in elementary have to compete even to go on the playground with the general head. We have to wait until general head kids have their lunch before kids can use the cafeteria. Our kids in middle and high school have no form of IDs. That has been one of our major complaints. And most of all our programs and even our academics are lacking, even when it comes to sporting events for our kids. Our kids tend to suffer from a lot of these things. We don't even have like the proper gyms in our school, like sensory gyms to help our kids. I'm hoping that as Chancellor that you will have a special town hall with the District 75 families and our district representative. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, you have a wonderful superintendent, Superintendent Louisant, who is a huge advocate, as am I, for District 75. And, I just said on a call last week, it is important that we ensure that our District 75 families and students who are in buildings in shared spaces are welcomed and affirmed in the same way I expect every other student to, and that we are really collaborating with a spirit of equity in mind and ensuring that we're providing access to appropriate resources. I want to see our schools working more closely and collaboratively with our District 75 partners, and also really building strong inclusion programs that are beneficial for all students. And so you will definitely hear my voice always advocating to ensure that we are being inclusive as a system and as a community.
Thank you, Chancellor. And we have time for one last question. Next speaker is Aissa Diop. Aissa, you're able to unmute. Aissa, are you able to hear us? Okay, we'll go to Marlene Cookson Wallace. Marlene, you're able to unmute.
Yes, hi. Good evening, and thank you for taking my question. I actually have a two-part question. The first part is I'm curious if middle schools and high schools will follow the elementary schools and recent science in moving from 6 feet to 3 feet, either this year or in the upcoming school year. And the second part of my question is, do you see any role for remote in any way for the next school year? I know we've been talking about 100% in person, and obviously thrilled and very excited to get my high schooler back to school and my middle schooler. But if there is any remote for next year, I'm wondering if the DOE is considering a remote only district, like a new district, like District 75, that would be citywide. So principals at individual schools can focus on in-person learning and really doing that without dividing their time. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And as a parent of a high schooler, I too am excited to get her back in full time, 5 days a week. As far as middle school and high schoolers following a 3-foot rule, that will be, guidance from the CDC, which we haven't seen come yet. And so I don't know, I really can't say that that will happen. As far as a role for remote in our system going forward, I definitely see that there's a role for remote. And what I'd love for us to do is move away from remote, but to a more comprehensive way that we provide online schooling from a real space of innovation in our system. We've learned a lot over this past year from the pandemic, and I think it's time for us to think about how do we leverage that muscle we built across our system to provide another way of learning, access to some of the questions earlier about enrichment and high-level courses, provide access across the system to more high-level courses, to more students. So there definitely is a place for remote. We just don't want to call it remote anymore. We're talking about online schooling, and which is a very different thing. Remote was the response to the pandemic. We want to build an innovative practice in our system.
Thank you, Chancellor. And at this point, I will turn it over to President Wu for final remarks.
Thank you so much, Senior Director Mojica. I just want once again thank you to you as well as the good folks over at FACE for helping coordinate and facilitate tonight's discussion in the town hall. I also want to give our gratitude to Chancellor Porter and also Ms. Sanchez Medina for also joining the conversation today and addressing a lot of the concerns from the community. And lastly, I want to thank everybody who attended from the public, as well as our interpreters who helped facilitate this dialogue tonight. I hope that this could be one of the beginning of many dialogues that we have to help support our multilingual learners and our English language learners. And thank you, everyone, for your good work, and let's continue to do this work.
Thank you, President Wu, and thank you to the committee. Have a wonderful evening.